So, in the latest revelation I came to on the saga of the psycho at Yale, Dr. Aruna Kalani, it turns out that her practice in New York is shown as permanently closed as of June 8th. Whether or not that's directly related to the talk, which happened like right before that, remains to be seen. However, it might also kind of give some clues as to why she was so desperate to get the Yale talk released, is that she was probably expecting that to be her next money-making wheelhouse. Regardless, it also makes you wonder how many clients she had in the first place. Given the basically that all of the negative press that she's gotten, I would imagine now she's going to have a lot of problems. And in order to find any like legitimate ratings, it was difficult because people who were pissed about what she put in her talk have been bombarding her with like 1-star ratings everywhere that you can possibly do so. But with that said, I was able to find one review that did sound semi-legitimate. Ratings for Dr. Aruna Kalani. This I found on one of the many kind of like Yelp websites for medical professionals. But this individual says, I'm very conflicted because her staff was prompt and my appointment was actually on time. I'm of Ghanaian descent, but I'm an albino. I've been bullied my whole life from both my black community and from all other races. Kids can be mean, especially when someone is different. Little did I know or expect that some of the most vicious bullying I would receive would be from the psychiatrist I signed up to see. She kept blaming me and seemed very confrontational. It became clear that she had contempt for me when she told me that I had to accept my whiteness as a cause of oppression against others, and to do better. It got awkward when I told her that I am ethnically African and from a black family. Whoops. So again, all of our questions of what would it be like to be her patient? Yeah, cringe. So in this article, The Psychopathic Problem of the White Mind, which was basically about the incident that went on at Yale, Katie Herzog did an interview with Dr. Kalani. One of the things that she reveals in the interview, or at least this is her version of it, is why she left Cornell. She said that she got beat up by a patient's family member. And then she said she has a friend who was blonde, and when she got threatened by a patient, just threatened by a patient, she said they did a grand rounds or a talk or some kind of symposium. They really addressed it. She was given a lot of support, and I'm not even sure if she was actually hit or not. She was like, I guess, upset that they didn't do more about her getting beat up by a patient's family member. Again, this is one of those examples of something that I would like to get more information about, from the other side. Most of this interview was just kind of her doubling down on previous positions or coming up with really lame excuses, but this conversation about bread definitely deserves to have a little bit more airtime. So, of how this is picked up in all aspects of culture, how do you see the after effects of colonialism manifesting itself in the white mind today? And she says, it's going to be hard for me to give you a one-sentence soundbite on this, but I would say a high level of guilt. I've never seen anything like this before, other than white people not eating bread, an incredible level of shame, feeling really exposed all the time, a lot of perfectionist tendencies, not letting themselves move forward, experiencing themselves as passive a lot. She literally said, like, white people not eating bread. The conversation continues. Let's talk about your practice. You've mentioned that you treat a lot of white people and you treat whiteness. What is the distinction between the two? She says, I wouldn't say there is a distinction. For example, for white women, I do help a lot with passive aggressiveness, not being able to use their voice, say things they feel like there would be a negative consequence. White people have an intense level of guilt. I have never seen a level of guilt that I see among white people. I mean, white people don't eat bread. Think about that. There have been wars all over the world over grains and bread, and only here white people are depriving themselves. Think about that shit. Everyone has this gluten allergy, and you're like, what the fuck is a gluten allergy? That's a psychosomatic symptom. If you actually talk to a GI doctor, meaning a gut doctor, they're going to say, well, there's celiac and then there's everything else with a wink. And you know that the everything else, what the everything else is. It's all the guilty gluten people. So she literally just believes that gluten intolerance and basically wheat intolerance is just white guilt. Further down, Miss Herzog presses her a little bit more on the bread issue, but also about the generalization issue. She said, "It does seem you generalize a lot about white people, but also people of color. Why do you do that?" And she says, "What do you feel is a generalization?" And Katie says, "Like white people having a high level of guilt or not eating bread. That's true for some people for sure, but I eat bread." She said, "You asked me before, what is the unconscious? I think the unconscious is coming out right now between you and I. This idea that I am the one that's generalizing is, I think, a defensive reaction to my talking about whiteness. You feel put on the spot, and so I'm the one that's generalizing." And she says, "So you don't think you're generalizing?" And in response, Dr. Kalani says, "This idea that I'm the one generalizing is actually defensive. Do I really believe on some level that every single white person is racist? No. Clearly I have not. I have that 1% left of that friend group." This is her talking about the few white people she didn't ghost. She said, "So no, I don't. At the same time, I'm saying how it functions psychologically when someone says you can't say that and not all of us. What you're saying subconsciously is, I'm the exception to what you just said, and you made me feel like I'm racist, and I don't experience it myself that way. I do not want to experience myself as a racist, and I'm going to turn the tables on you and say you're the one who's racist because you're generalizing, and that's what a racist does." The problem is she is generalizing. Like, I actually just got to the point where every single sentence started with white people do this and white people do that. That's how she talks. Not just during her talk at Yale, but during all of her TikTok videos. It's white people do this and white people do that. That's just a generalization. It's not a defensive reaction to point this out. I could be saying, baloney does this, baloney does that. Baloney is this and baloney is that. It's still generalization. It's not a defensive reaction to, what sandwich meat I like. It's still a generalization. So the conversation continues. "Sure, there are lots of white people who don't eat bread, although I'm not one of them. I exclusively eat bread. And I'm also a little skeptical of some claims of gluten intolerance, but my assumption has always been that they're just buying into pseudoscientific BS and following health trends. Do you think it's white guilt?" And she goes, "On an emotional level, absolutely. Like if I raise an eyebrow at a white person around bread, the first response is like, it's real. What does that mean? They mean it's not psychological. Right, it's a medical issue, not a mental one." And then she says, "I don't deny that people may get symptoms, but how is it that all these people suddenly now, after all the violence has occurred, are not eating bread? It's like the weirdest fucking thing." And she says, "But what does bread have to do with violence? What's the connection there?" To which Dr. Kalani says, "I think the bread is about guilt and needing to keep them in a state of deprivation and stay guilty." One of the other things she says here at the end, when the interviewer says, "Do you think white people should feel guilty?" She says, "No, I think guilt is the most useless emotion on the planet. What function does it serve? It's not helpful." Somebody who's incapable of being, guilty, or thinks that feeling guilty or having remorse is somehow useless is a total fucking psychopath. But anyway, so just think for a moment about what you have to do to wrap your head around a theory that the reason why white people are avoiding bread, and they're not avoiding, bread as a whole. That's the funny thing is that this is right after her trying to defend herself from accusations of generalizing. She just said all white people don't eat bread. And that apparently it's all due to our, inherent guilt over colonialism. Well, here's the thing. I actually did the basically did the work and found that, in fact, real scientific data is showing that intestinal cell damage and systematic immune activation in individuals reporting sensitivity to wheat in the absence of celiac disease. So, in other words, real studies have been done by real doctors to find that, in fact, this is a real thing. It does exist. It's not, white guilt over colonialism that is causing these people's bodies to react this way. I will link this article in the description. But suffice it to say, people do have, some people do have a reaction when eating wheat products. Period. But, again, just... This is an example of there's just no science in anything she says. So the thing about that talk was I kept waiting to hear about the science. There's nothing in that talk that's science. It's just her saying white people do this, white people do that. She doesn't cite any kind of like studies. She just kind of goes on matter-of-factly in her like worldview, explaining everything bad about white people in enormous amounts of generalizations. And, as we saw when she was having her meltdown over Yale not immediately, basically releasing the talk, was that she just started inventing new white people problems like white amnesia and white confusion or whatever. She's just deluded. It's that simple. So in my next video, I'm going to cover this individual who wrote the article on having whiteness. His name is Donald Moss. I actually purchased this article for the purpose of doing a video about it, and that will be where I'm headed next. And I think the final thing I'm going to talk about on this topic is going to be just the problems in psychology and the social sciences in general that Dr. Kalani and Dr. Moss are really just kind of symptoms of a greater disease when it comes to wokeness invading the medical professions and the social sciences in particular. So anyway, I'm going to leave you guys with this video that is actually a parody that was put together by We the Internet TV. And I stumbled across it on my Facebook feed recently, and I watched it again, and I realized that it's just not as funny. And it's not because of the presentation. They did a great job. It's that after watching this parody, it just doesn't look like a parody anymore, having done the work that I just did this week, uncovering that there are in fact therapists exactly like this.
Since this is your first therapy session, Louis, why don't we start with you telling me a little bit about what brought you here?
For the past few months, I've been feeling really depressed. And I've been sad before, but this is different. I just feel really alone, and I don't have anyone to talk to.
But you're white.
What does that have to do with it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were gay.
I'm not.
But you identify as a different gender.
No.
So you're a straight white cis male who feels alone.
Yeah.
How could you ever feel alone? Or unhappy?
That's what I'm here to talk about.
Do you realize the kinds of problems people who aren't straight white cis males have?
No, I don't.
Of course you don't.
Is this how this works? Or can I just start talking about why I'm sad?
I guess.
I've been feeling deep grief ever since my father died.
Okay.
I always felt distant from him ever since I was a child, and I never got a chance to tell him how I really felt.
You know that 23% of children are raised in a household with just a single mother.
No, I didn't know that. Does that relate to my situation somehow? Like, even though I'm an adult, I've become the child of a single mother? Is it like Freudian or something?
No. I'm just pointing out that at least 23% of children have it worse than you.
Oh, okay. But I still miss my dad.
So you're saying that fathers are more capable than mothers?
No, not at all. I love my mother, and she's actually having a harder time dealing with the death of my father. They were married for 50 years.
That's sexist.
What?
The institution of marriage is sexist and abusive.
My father was a kind man. He loved my mother.
According to whose definition of love? The patriarchy's?
No, my mom's.
Your mother isn't a woman of color, is she?
No.
And she sounds very confused.
I don't know what we're talking about anymore.
You know what, Louis? Why don't we move on to something a little less problematic? You had written in your assessment you were having thoughts of suicide.
Yeah, I've thought about hanging myself.
With rope? Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, it's an awful thought to have, and I'm pretty scared.
I can't believe you'd be so insensitive.
Insensitive?
Hello? Lynchings in the South? You're a white man appropriating black pain.
If I hang myself, it's a lynching?
Metaphorically, America is moving forward, and it doesn't need white men anymore. And this is your way of taking back your lost status.
By killing myself?
I see this all the time. Straight white men think they can stop the train of progress by jumping in front of it. It's disgusting.
Can we stop talking about suicide, please?
Oh, this is all about you, isn't it?
This is my therapy session that I'm paying for. So yeah.
Racist.
What's racist?
You are so focused on your own narrow view. What about the half black, half Latino, trans, lesbian, single mother working 2 minimum wage jobs just to make ends meet? She can't afford therapy.
So because she can't afford a therapist, I shouldn't have one?
No, go to therapy, but talk about her.
Why would I talk about her?
Because she has problems.
Okay. So if she can tackle her problems, I can tackle mine.
No, you fucking idiot. She will never overcome because you are keeping her down.
I don't even know who the you're talking about.
You know what? I gotta be totally honest with you, Lewis. You've got a lot of work to do, and it's gonna take several sessions for me to break through to a white supremacist.
I'm not a white supremacist.
Yes, you are. Oh, you have feelings of shame and sadness, and you think that they're all about you, but they're not. What those feelings are really about is how you've enslaved women, people of color, and the LGBTQ community in a toxic system of white patriarchal supremacy. And until you admit that, you'll never change.
I've never wanted to kill myself more than I do right now.
That is so offensive.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you click the little bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And if you really like the video, you can even support We the Internet TV on Patreon. Check out the link in the description below.
So that concludes part 2 of this series. I do suggest, if you haven't, to go back and listen to the first version. And I'm going to be making another one. This project is really exhausting because suffering through this lady and unfortunately trying to understand it with a terrible audio quality, is difficult in of itself. And again, I will be doing another video about the article that refers to whiteness as like a parasitic disease. I actually went ahead and purchased the paper, which is unfortunate. It was like $30 and it was really terribly written, really bad, but we'll get into that in the other video. I've still got more parts of the discussion with Johnny Walker and Logical Checkmate that I'll be uploading as well. Please like and subscribe, ring the bell. The algorithm is starting to come around, but I definitely need you guys' help in this regard. I do have Patreon and Subscribestar, but it's not really my motive to make money on this. It's more just about moving the truth. If you guys want to drop something in there, you can, but especially with the pandemic, it's not. That's one of the reasons I haven't really been saying anything. In my podcast days, I was more, interested in money. But what I found was just that if it became a job, then it was difficult to maintain the same, quality and, so anyway, thanks again for tuning in. Please share, because my motive about this is to get the truth out about these situations. And, the algorithm is basically pretty much only friendly to people who maybe in some cases, even just what the algorithm is doing its job, there are people who need to hear this analysis who won't otherwise be exposed to it. So, and I do think that this, presents, what's really a larger problem in the social sciences, and people just kind of write that off like it's not a big deal. But, I already interact with college kids who've been brainwashed by stuff like this, and I've already seen the effect that it has. And that's why they're doing it. They want society to change in such a way to fit their agendas. And unfortunately, beyond just any issue of any Red Scare fear of communism, I don't want to live in a world where people's, skin color determines who they are for everybody around them. It's really ironic that I have to oppose what's supposed to be the anti-racist ideology to achieve the goal of us just living as people, as human beings. But that's really the way it works, because if you let this kind of ideology infect your mind, then all you're thinking about every time you interact with people is race. I just want to be human, and I don't want to live with other humans. So, again, thanks for listening.